Welcome to Go Bucks. Matt,
Boo!
can I get a go blue? Like you're not even representing.
Boo!
You're not even wearing Ohio State gear. Is this one of your coping methods?
I'm too depressed to even think about it.
Yeah, because I know Buckeye Nation was pretty. They were pretty confident. I'd say Buckeye Nation thought they figured maybe like there was like a 80% chance that Ohio State was going to win that game. I mean,
I don't
is
think it
that
was
about
eighty
right?
percent. I don't think it was 80%. I would say most people probably thought like 60%.
You think?
Yeah, because I mean we were underdogs and by what three points or so at Michigan against a great defense, and a lot of returning. You guys had like 42 like fifth and sixth year seniors and a bunch of stuff. So I always thought like we had a couple glaring weaknesses that I was worried about, and all of those things happened to come true.
All of them?
I
I
was
mean,
worried.
I don't
I
know
was
about
worried
all.
about Kyle throwing a pick six, which he did like almost on the first play, on the
Yeah.
first drive. It was returned to the 7 yard line. That's basically a pick six. And then I was worried that our linebackers wouldn't be able to cover your tight ends. And they weren't. Um, I was worried that there would be some special teams problems, and there were not. It was actually new problems. I was expecting some different problems, but um, we missed one long field goal that probably shouldn't have even been attempted. But more importantly, like usually the one part of special teams we've been pretty solid at the last few years is punting the ball and getting it down inside the 10 yard line. And we had a bunch of terrible punts. And then on the flip side, your kicker made all his kicks, and uh, the punter made some great ones, especially that one inside the 5 right
Yeah,
before the end of the first half.
that was
So like
good.
I'm thinking special teams probably gave Michigan about 6 to 9 points in this game,
No, I wouldn't say
based
special
on
teams.
your good
I
special
mean,
teams and
it's
our poor special teams. So, for instance,
maybe.
like
I mean,
you guys made a 50-yard field goal, and we missed a 50-yard field goal. So there's 6 point swing, and then if you would have kicked the ball like a normal punt and we get it at the 15 or the 20-yard line instead of inside the 5, we would have had enough time to actually maybe get the ball to the 20-yard line instead of the 40-yard line and having to kick a 50-yard field goal. We would have been able to kick like a 30 to 40-yard field goal. So that special teams allowed you guys to you know turn that big play by Marvin Harrison that wasn't quite enough, because we started on our own too. So I mean that's another 3 points right there. So I mean, a lot of it, there's a lot of things that your coach was very aggressive. Like we were actually stopping you guys on all the third downs, but you went for
mhm.
it on every fourth down and made them all. And then you started the fourth quarter with a halfback pass for like a 35-yard pass to the tight end. Um, they were very, not like a ton of aggressive play calls, but enough. And then I thought our defense played well overall, other than just not being able to really handle the tight end, and then we weren't able to make a stop when we needed in the second half. I think you guys got field goals and touchdowns every single drive until the last drive where you were able to milk 7 minutes off the clock. So our defense, I think last year Jim Knowles was very aggressive on all the plays, and that burnt him. And we talked all offseason about how our defense, gave up 5 plays for 400 yards or something ridiculous. And then this year, he's been completely changed it to the bend but don't break defense. I think he only blitzed JJ 4 times the whole game, so he went too far the other direction. And especially at the end, like when that you guys are running every single play, we had to do something to stop
Yeah,
them there, and we weren't able to stop you until it was too late.
yeah. That's funny that you say that. I mean, I'm not surprised that they only blitzed JJ a few times because he turned out to be healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have to get to the comments here after we intro this because some of them are absolutely hilarious. I'm reading them through right now, but yeah, it's funny. I kept looking at Josh Proctor back there deep, as the deep safety. He was basically like the whole game. He was like that kid that's not very good at t-ball,
Mm-hmm.
and you put him way back in the backfield. Unfortunately, that kid was me back when I was playing t-ball. Like, Nate, go take the deep outfield. You can't do any damage back there. I could be sitting back there with my glove 2 feet away, just picking daisies at that point. That's kind of how Josh Proctor was back there, because they kept, like Joel Platt kept telling him, yeah, they're keeping a safety deep in case, Donovan Edwards breaks it. And you're right, they probably did get a little too conservative on defense, which is, really,
and on offense. I
But
mean, we were conservative on both sides.
But I don't know. I mean, excuse me. So, I mean, I kind of feel this was a close game. Like, this is closer than I predicted. And I was thinking about it today. Like, close games should probably be the norm with these two teams. Like, when was the last time we had a close Ohio State versus Michigan game? 2016, with we had the where JT Barrett was short by a foot in that last play. You remember that game, I'm sure. But I mean, usually they're just blowouts, and so we've become accustomed to seeing Ohio State versus Michigan blowouts, and this didn't turn out that way, and it should be that way. It shouldn't be blowouts. Both teams should be awesome, especially if they're undefeated at this point in the game in the season. They shouldn't be blowouts. So this is a good thing in my estimation. Obviously, not for Buckeye these days, but there's that, and then it feels like that end of an era too. Like, everyone keeps talking about that, and I think people are still going to be really excited about Ohio State versus Michigan. It's still going to be a huge game no matter what. But before this, you and I were talking about like how it could turn into, they're just like players being held out, kind of like the NFL. After you've done, maybe you're undefeated, you're going to make it to the playoffs. It may not make that dynamic may not be correct for college football playoffs. Maybe that won't be the case, but I could see where you're like, hey, we're undefeated. We don't really need to play our best players in the Big Ten championship. We can afford to lose this game and still get into the playoffs where we think we'll land, and we'll have healthy players. We won't take any chances on injuries, kind of like the NFL dynamic. I don't know. What are your thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I like the idea of the game only happening once. And while it's always fun to think about how nice a rematch would have been, like last year had, we've been able to beat Georgia, and then you guys would have been able to beat TCU. Having a rematch in the playoffs would have been cool for a Buckeye fan to get redemption. But at the same point, I think it makes the game more valuable and meaningful if it actually means that you don't have a rematch, right? I mean, it's different from the NFL. I mean, the NFL is a completely different thing, and that's why, each game doesn't really matter as much. And in college, it's always mattered more. But, I also look at the past, where while it hasn't happened for Ohio State and Michigan, there's been the games a few years ago where Georgia lost to Jamison Williams in Alabama in the conference championship game, but then they got a rematch in the playoffs and won a national title. And then a few years before that, LSU and Bama had the regular season matchup, and then, they also got to play again in the title game. So there's been a lot of those cases where they, because that was the year where Alabama didn't even win their division, let alone the conference championship game, because LSU won the division, and they ended up losing to them then in the title game. But so no one complains when they had their losses in the conference championship game, but it seems like this year a lot of people are writing Ohio State off because, well, you already lost to Michigan, but I don't hear anyone really complaining too much when that happened to LSU and Bama and Georgia in the past.
Yeah. All right, we got to get to some of these comments because these are pretty funny, and they're not necessarily complimentary to Ohio State. So you need to take your medicine.
I would expect nothing less.
Andrew Lane. How does Ryan Ryan still have a job after losing to an assistant coach and losing our best corner and best offensive lineman? Good question.
Well, okay, I'll answer each of those. So, number one, he still only has 7 losses, and he's basically loses the top 5 teams, and the only top 5 team he beat was in Clemson on the rematch in 2020. So he has not been able to get over the hump yet. But if you look at a lot of the big coaches that we consider successful, you look at Dabo Swinney and and pretty much everyone other than Saban. Usually it takes a little while to to get going. Like even Harbaugh, like everyone considers Harbaugh a pretty elite coach, even though he hasn't had hardly any success in the bowl games. He has what, one bowl win, or should we fire Harbaugh too? And then, and then, but also I don't know when. I know your offensive lineman got hurt really late in the game, right? Wasn't that like in the fourth quarter?
It was the middle of the third, and then we lost Will Johnson in like the beginning of the fourth. So
okay,
big losses at that point. Let's move on here because we've got a lot of comments actually. Antoine says, "Go! It's easy like Sunday morning once again." Not as easy, but I mean, Michigan was never not leading in the game.
I mean, I felt like we had a chance to win it until that last interception, man. We were driving. I thought it was going to be like Notre Dame again.
Yeah, it would have been a tough task. Antoine, Harbaugh is the only coach that can watch Netflix and beat Little Ryan Day at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they did a better job of game planning and they were more aggressive and they deserved to win.
Yeah. Kiss the ring. The King of the North has returned.
Well, you know what, Antoine? Do you think that Harbaugh is going to coach again? I would say it seems like he might get to coach, I guess, against Iowa and then in the playoffs, maybe, unless something happens before then. But I'm thinking next year, before the season starts, for sure, he's going to get, a show cause or something where he's banned for coaching for at least 10 or 12 games or something. And I think at that point, Michigan's going to have to cut him loose.
Maybe, but we've got an assistant coach that's done pretty good in as his first test.
So. Yes, he has. But how much of that was him? Because Harbaugh was still, in charge of everything during the week.
True, but I mean, he was still running the offense. He was still the head coach, and he was also the offensive line coach. So he can probably find
Harbaugh gave him the spreadsheet and told him what to do. So we'll see. Can he do that without Harbaugh's input?
Brian says, "No head coach, no problem. No signs, no problem. No Will Johnson, no problem. Most embarrassing loss by a coach in this rivalry from an optic standpoint."
I agree with that.
Hard to disagree.
From an optic standpoint, definitely. But this was also, in my opinion, probably. I don't know. Is this the best Michigan team? Now, I think that the defense, while you guys have had a better pass rush on previous defenses, this secondary was clearly one of the better ones. Like I was more impressed with the secondary. I was thinking there might have been more passing for us to be had since I saw what happened in the Maryland game. I thought we'd be able to be a little more successful passing the ball. And we did a pretty good job after that first quarter. It's just we can't have a whole bad quarter and expect to win. Like basically that first quarter cost them the game. They just weren't able to ever really recover from that pick at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean that kind of set the tone, and you were coming from behind basically the entire game. Yeah. Lisa says it's embarrassing to lose to a team with basically no head coach, and this is the third straight year in a row. Yeah.
Well, the last two were just cheating years, so we don't need to worry about those. But this year was definitely embarrassing.
Yeah, very true. Excuse me. Yeah, Lisa, our QB isn't very good. He threw 2 picks that probably cost us the game. Yeah, that is what cost Ohio State the game.
Well, I will say he did make some really good throws. Like right before the end of the first half where there was a huge pass rush on both sides. He actually stepped up in the pocket and threw a dart to Marvin. That was probably the best throw he's made all year. I mean, stepping up into the heavy pressure. The one at the end where he threw the second interception, that one, there was a ton of pressure. Our left guard just basically got knocked over on his back. And, he should have just threw that away or tried to dump it off to someone short. But, when you see that much pressure, you can't just do what you're planning on doing when you see that your lineman is falling down like that. So that was just.
Are you talking about Donovan Jackson?
Yes.
Like he's number 74, right?
Yeah. So he was actually he actually was
pushed over.
Yeah. So that was
last play.
He had the highest grade. He was the highest graded offensive lineman on our team too. He just happened to make the most crucial play at the very end, right?
He got pushed right down on his back by Jalen Harrell. And then
And
it was
so
Jalen Harrell that came in and hit Kyle
yeah, so
and made him throw
that
that
was
pass.
yeah, I think he graded at like a 60 or something or 59, and that was the highest grade offensive lineman. We had another offensive lineman, Matt Jones, our right guard. He graded out as a 4.
Hey,
A
question from
4.
Andrew. Question from Andrew. How confident are you versus Iowa? I'll let you handle that because we know all roads go through Iowa.
I don't know. The funny thing is, I mean, you guys are what, 22.5 point favorites over Iowa. Most of the other conference games are like 5. Even Bama's only a 5 point underdog against Georgia. Louisville is a 5 point underdog to FSU, and I think Okie State is 12 point underdog to Texas. So you guys have the huge favor of 22 points. That's a massive, just because they know that Iowa can't score. But I think it's still going to be hard to cover just because. I mean, Penn State beat them 31-0, and they're probably not going to score many points. But even after they lost their star corner a few weeks ago, it's still they're still a great defense.
Yeah, they are, and you know what?
And it's hard to get up to play Iowa too. I mean, that's just such a boring game to play.
Oh, well, I mean, it shouldn't be. I think they'll be up for it because it's the Big Ten championship.
I know, but Iowa just takes the joy out of things. Like they
It would have
make
been
everything
so much more joyous
yeah,
if Cade McNamara was the quarterback.
yeah.
I mean, it would make it at least maybe a little more, interesting in any case. But yeah, the TV timeouts, like there were long TV timeouts and just all the timeouts that seemed to all happen at once. Yeah,
So many. Yeah.
We didn't get the tired defensive line for Ohio State that I really noticed. Not until the end of the game. I did notice
the
that at
last
the end of the
drive
game,
they were
the last
definitely getting a lot of push. But looking
Yeah.
at our defensive grades were better than our offense by quite a bit. Like the only high offensive guys were Xavier Johnson was the best, but he didn't get a lot of action.
Yeah.
But he did really well. Marvin did well. Travion did okay. He wasn't, he had a lot of passes where, the quarterback just couldn't get him the ball. Like he was just getting knocked down, or he would just throw it in the dirt for whatever reason. He's bad at those the really short passes. Like it seems like the 5 to 10 yard passes he's okay, but whenever he's trying to do a check down to the running back, it's amazing how many times he screws up that little pass. Like he makes the deep passes even more than the little check downs to Travion. For some reason, he can never make those.
Yeah. Hey, Brian just says this game debunked the value of sign stealing.
You guys already had.
I do.
Well, no, because so look at the last 2 years, you guys won big with the sign stealing, and so just because you
Ohio
win,
State's defense was trash.
That too. That's why it's hard to judge for sure. But I mean, this, obviously we just didn't have the NFL guys on our defense, but I think it affected our offense a lot the last 2 years because obviously we had unbelievable offenses that were slowed down. When you know if it's a run or a pass, just that alone is a huge advantage. And you guys did scout us this year too. So,
hey, I think the cheater birds are silenced, totally silenced now, and of course the NCAA will still come down with their punishment, whatever that's going to be.
Yes,
I think it should be time served. To be honest, already what the Big Ten actually has done to us, to Michigan, keeping Jim Harbaugh away from the Ohio State game, that had to have been torture for the dude. I mean, it really.
NCAA they're going to give him a show cause. They're going to lose scholarships. You're going to have 2 years of vacated wins, bowl bans. It's going to be lovely.
Yeah. Well, Antoine says he played football, knows the sign stuff is overrated. So it doesn't really help most of the time. Most teams know what's coming, but you still got to stop it. Most players know that. And it's not, I mean, you get signs the legal way too, right? And if that was that big of a benefit, they
wouldn't be doing it.
Probably got more signs. Granted, it was probably better. It's Michigan; they do everything better. They steal signs better. They run the ball better. So,
all right, well, it's fine. We've gone over the sign stealing to death. We can move on from the sign stealing.
This is a good one. Ryan Sims, he says, "I do not want to hear from Diego anymore that the QB position is not that important." Oh, I like the throwing shade.
Amen to that.
He's not
JJ made all the passes. He was able to run, get some first downs, running the ball or being on the run, and throwing to receivers diving out of bounds, made some great passes. Although I do still, to my dying breath, think that pass into the end zone was intercepted by Burke.
No. It, so
100% intercepted.
we could probably argue about that for a while, but here, I mean, the way I saw it was Roman Wilson he caught it, made the football
Bobbled it.
moves. Well, he
Bobbled
started
it.
bobbling it, but that was after he crossed the plane of the end zone. So he had
Well, it
already
doesn't
caught it,
matter when
made
you
his
when you
football
when you catch
moves,
the ball in the
crossed the
end zone, you
plane.
have to be able to catch the ball through the contact, through the ground.
Yeah, but he crossed and went into the end zone.
He didn't have. There's no way he had possession as he
That's
was
what they
bobbling
said.
it. They were crazy. There's no way.
He had control of it. He started bobbling it after he scored the touchdown. He had control initially, and then took it, made his football moves, crossed the plane of the end zone,
Yeah,
and then
I
started
don't think
bobbling it
so.
and came out. So I mean, obviously they have more angles they can look at than us. We'll just trust the referees, just in this case only. But yeah, it's very interesting. So it's the end of the era. So, and one other thing, I was worried about that happened with Michigan was Carson Barnhart. You remember like how he was just getting ripped on? He's our our right tackle. He was getting beaten pretty badly by Penn State and then by Maryland, but it didn't seem to affect him in this game. He was the right tackle in last year's game too, and it didn't affect him. But is it maybe just that Ohio State doesn't have speed rushers? Is that kind of the thing?
Well, I mean, all of our defensive linemen graded out really well in the game. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, I know Hall was the best player on both sides of the football for us. He had one sack and tons of pressures. So I know you were thinking that he was undersized, but he was a menace all game. And actually, the one person that didn't do that well, the only person on the defensive line that didn't do well was Tyleek Williams, who has been one of our better linemen all year. So yeah, I guess one of four didn't grade out as a champion, but the other three were top notch. So it just it came down to basically our linebackers were just getting abused by the tight ends, like I was worried about.
That was really the only weakness. I mean, I thought
Yeah,
the defense, Ohio State's defense, really did pretty good considering. I mean, Michigan was moving the ball at the end, and they just kind of like kept. They were just one or two steps ahead the entire game. Is all.
yeah. I
But
mean, there's a lot of those plays, like the one at the end where Quorum broke off that 20-yard touchdown right after the lineman got injured. It was basically him making one move on Sonny Styles, who is our safety. But did you see any linebackers anywhere even in the picture? We have three linebackers. Where are they?
yeah, I know what's his name had a cast. Who's your
Yeah,
linebacker? Which one is that?
Eichenberg was playing with one
Eichenberg.
arm, so he was a complete liability. He was the lowest graded defender on our team. You would think after seeing him just getting juked and just destroyed in pass coverage the entire game that you would sit him. Like he was just completely useless out there. He's a complete liability.
Yeah. So Kyle needs to be replaced, I think. I mean, you need to go into the transfer portal and find a quarterback. I think that's. I mean, unless Ryan Day thinks he's going to improve immensely, do you think you're going to be? Is that? Do you think that's happening? Ohio State
Well,
getting a new quarterback?
I don't think we will get one in the transfer portal because I think we already have a couple guys on the roster that are probably going to be good enough. Like whether it's Lincoln Keenholz or Devin Brown, one of those two guys will probably step up. Is my guess. The other option is going in the transfer portal and getting some offensive linemen because if you look at, I'm sure we've gone over this before, but Kyle's numbers when he's not, I don't know if it's blitzed or when he's just pressured, but when he has time, he's fine. And when he, like with most quarterbacks, but there's some people like Bo Nix and Penix and everything, like they have really good numbers against the blitz too. So the elite quarterbacks make plays even when they're blitzed, and Kyle is just really bad when he gets blitzed. So either you get a new quarterback that's mobile, or you get a offensive line through the transfer portal that's going to be an upgrade. Because that was, like we had every time we like lose out on a position coach gets switched, we usually have like a 2-year gap where we just don't have any players there. So like our offensive line has had 2 years of nobody, not landing any of the top recruits for 2 years. So I was saying at the beginning of this year, like my big concern outside of, a new quarterback is going to be replacing all these linemen with guys that aren't the high profile recruits that we're used to.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I mean,
you
it's the
could go
worst
with
line we've
guys
had
on
in
the
10
roster.
years.
You could
Worst
go with
line in
guys on
10
the
years.
roster, but then you would actually have to start all over again with a first time starter and go through all those growing pains. That's the only issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the Buckeyes probably are pretty confident they're going to win at Ohio State next year. Like we're already talking about next year. It was just yesterday the game, but yeah, I mean, I think the Buckeyes need to maybe do that, honestly. And another thing that happened as a result of the game yesterday, and you mentioned recruiting just now, Ohio State's 2021 recruiting class was sick. It was you had five stars on there, and that didn't even include Marvin Harrison Jr. because he was like ranked in the hundreds at some point. So I mean, you basically had 6 5-star players, and those guys are all going 0-3. Like, I mean, that's very depressing in the fact that Ryan Day could not win with that class. That's crazy, and those guys are juniors. Like, who did that include? That had JTT, had Jack Sawyer.
Sawyer was the number 1 overall.
Had Kyle McCord, had Travion Henderson, and was it Donovan Jackson?
And Mecca Ibuka.
Mecca Ibuka. Oh, Donovan Jackson's older than that. Yeah. And Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a pretty good class.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's so many things that just all goes back to recruiting. Like it's just like one crucial hit or miss in recruiting seems to make or break your whole season at the end of the day. Like when I go back to when Ohio State won in 2014, we obviously had a bunch of great pieces, but one of the big differences we had that year was we were able to get a year or two prior, we were able to land 5-star safety Von Bell, and we beat him. We beat Alabama for that guy, and he helped us win the title. And then this last year, we lost out on a stud safety, Caleb Downs, who was the 5-star top 5 player overall to Alabama. And he ended up as a freshman starting this year and one of the best secondaries in the country at Alabama. So you take like one guy like that, and that way, like let's say Latham Ransom is hurt, and you put in the 5-star safety Caleb Downs, and then maybe he's able to make an interception or something, and we just didn't have, we just needed one more stud player in the secondary. We just we have like lots of 5-star receivers, 5-star defensive linemen, but there's certain areas like didn't have the talent at linebacker, didn't have that safety ball hawk that could make a ton of interceptions. I mean, it's a pretty good secondary this year, like the best we've had since 2019, but just didn't have the the guys that can make a bunch of turnovers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I want to talk to you about the game management at the end of the half and game time management, coaching management at the end of the game too. So at the end of the half, Ryan Day lets like 40 seconds drain off the end on the clock. Hearing a lot of Buckeye Nation and Buckeyes basically being real upset about that. And I don't know if they felt like he should have just gone for a touchdown in that moment. I don't think I didn't necessarily disagree with going for a field goal, but he certainly could have used those 40 seconds and a timeout to maybe get a little closer than 50 yarder.
Wasn't it fourth down? It was fourth down though, right?
I think it would have been fourth.
Yeah, it was like it was like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2.
Yeah,
so it's not like they could have just done another pass play. There was no, you were either risking no points to convert a 4th and short. No, I definitely disagree with, because you don't always want to go for it on 4th down, but the guy, so our number 1, our special teams is not that great. The guy had never kicked a field goal more than 46, 47 yards in his career. This was it was a windy day in Michigan, and it was on the road, high stress environment, and it would be a career long field goal in cold weather. That just seems like the recipe for disaster. So I would never in a million years even think about doing that. So,
Okay.
and then also, I mean, what is the risk here too? Because if you don't make the 4th and 1, then it's not like Michigan's going to do anything. There's like 30 seconds left, right? So Michigan's most likely going to just run the ball and you go into halftime.
Hmm.
So there was a very low risk of going to that. Either because there was almost a 0% chance that he's making that field goal anyway.
Yeah.
So I think he should have at a minimum, try to get another 10 or 15 yards closer for a makeable field goal.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
But that was
That,
still out of all the things that happened, coaching wise, I think that that's pretty minor in comparison to other gripes that I have.
this is a good comment by Ray Day. Guys on Michigan that's making plays are from Ohio. He's talking about Rod Moore,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
guy who made the pick at the very end of the game. He's a 3-star
Yeah.
DB from Ohio. So
Yeah. Has he been good all year, or is it just in the game?
he's been good for 3 years. He wasn't a starter, but he was a major contributor in 2021. He made a ton of tackles on Garrett Wilson. Um, Specifically remember like Garrett Wilson. I remember Travion. He was making plays all through that game. So he's been there. He's a junior.
So
I don't know if he's
that's
going to
the
leave.
bad thing about that too is it's that happens to be an area where it's not like we had good players in the secondary the last 2 years either. So we definitely could have used help in the secondary the last 2 years.
Yeah. And so talking about the time management, one more thing, and then we'll move on. We need to talk about like what we're actually the title of this video is about, which is Ohio State going to get in. One more thing on the time, like at the end of the game, seems like Ryan Day. I looked back. He started calling his 3 timeouts. Started with 2:07 left in the game. He probably should have been calling them earlier than that. I imagine, right?
No, I was thinking he should have called it earlier than that, but you know what? The drive, or I'm sorry, the first down right before that, I was thinking, there was 3 minutes left. I was like, maybe he should start calling them now. And I'm glad that they didn't because you guys ended up getting another first down. So he waited until the 2 minute one to call the timeout because if he would have called it earlier, we would have just lost because you guys ended up getting another first down there. So it just so happened that he did get lucky and called it at the right time because when he finally called the timeouts, that was the only time we actually stopped you. So it ended up working out. There was still a minute left, but really, if you want to talk about time management, that wasn't an issue at all. That was fine. The issue was the previous drive where we actually got a touchdown to keep us in the game. Like they were not doing that. They were not playing with any urgency. They were just taking their good old time. Like I don't mind if you're running and passing, but you need to be running back to the line, calling a play and hiking it within a few seconds. You can't just be taking 20 seconds to play it. Like there was no urgency to try to score quickly, right? I mean, they were down 2 scores, so they needed urgency, and they were not playing with urgency, and that ended up costing them because they only had 1 minute to go at the end when they finally stopped them. And then, if they would have played with urgency their previous drive, then maybe things would have been different. So that was part of the problem. But, again, the bigger problem, I think, I didn't notice it while watching it live, but the fact that, we gave up scores, whether it be a field goal or a touchdown, we gave up scores the entire second half until the last drive, which the 7-minute drive was just about as bad as the score because it was 7 minutes, right? So basically the whole second half, we didn't do anything on defense that helped our team.
Yeah. Yeah. And good points. Good points. So let's move on here. This is a good segue from King Moss. Oregon beats Washington. Louisville beats FSU. We are in. Guessing, talking about a Buckeye fan here.
No, he's wrong because first of all, Oregon
Texas
beating Washington. Yeah, Texas. I know Texas and FSU losing and then Bama losing. The Oregon Washington I think is irrelevant. I mean, I think it'd probably be better if Washington wins because then Oregon is officially out because they would have 2 losses. There's an outside chance, I guess, if Oregon were to win close, then maybe Washington and Oregon both make it in. So I would prefer either Washington to win or Oregon to win big. That eliminates the second one, but I still think that's a pretty minor, really low percentage chance of that being an issue. So I think the biggest issue is FSU has to lose to Louisville and Bama has to lose to Georgia, and then Texas, I think according to the coaches poll and the AP poll, we're ahead of Texas right now. I think that's what is going to happen also in the playoff rankings on Tuesday. I think we'll also be 5, Texas 6, Alabama 7. So, obviously if Alabama beats Georgia, we're screwed. So, I mean, Georgia has to win that. They're only 5-point favorites, which is actually surprising to me. But I still think there's an outside chance that even if Texas beats Oklahoma State, like in a close game, even if they win, I mean, I think that they would probably make it, but I don't think that that's 100% because the committee hasn't been giving Texas a lot of love this year. I don't know. I think that there's still an outside chance, even if Texas wins, that we would get in. But I think, honestly, the only safe way is Texas losing, FSU losing, and Bama losing. And if those three things happen, I think we're a lock.
Yeah, I mean, so either way, Washington and Oregon, one of those two are in, right?
Yes, correct.
So, and it doesn't really matter which one.
Nope.
Texas is difficult because if they win, they will have won their conference championship. You know that the playoff committee is going to put them in. I think that's. I know what you mean, but they've got that. Yeah. They've got their conference, and they beat Bama.
They have a ton of they beat Bama. They have a ton of close games though. Tons of close 3-point. Yeah. Like Colorado beat TCU, and they only beat TCU by 3. They have like a ton of 3-point wins against 3 to 5-point wins against really bad teams. But like you said, I ultimately agree that they'll probably put them in. So
yeah, probably. And King Moss just said again, Bama could win. Bama could win. They can't jump us. They barely beat Auburn. But
they would 100% jump us.
They would probably jump Ohio State.
Anyone
probably
that
from the Kyle McCord effect.
Yeah, anyone that beats Georgia is going in 100%.
Yeah, that is true. They barely beat Auburn. I was really hoping for like a bunch of upsets yesterday, but none of them happened.
Yeah, everyone played bad. Like Washington almost lost to Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama almost lost to Auburn. FSU was losing to Florida for most of that game.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and assuming Michigan beats Iowa, yeah, Antoine says, I know one thing, I don't want to mess with them damn little Buckeyes. I'm not going to lie, they kind of scare. Yeah, I don't want to play Oregon either. I'd rather play Washington than Oregon.
Well, everyone is afraid of Oregon because they're really good at beating terrible teams. Like, you know what? You know who else is really good at beating bad teams? Is Ohio State. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to beat good teams. Like Oregon has one ranked win this year, and that's against 4-loss Oregon State, who I assume is still going to be ranked by the playoff committee, but we don't know for 100%. But either way, they're going to be ranked like 21 to 24 if they're ranked. So it's not like it's a quality win. And their only ranked team other ranked team they played was Washington, and they lost. So they're really good at running up the score on bad teams, and everyone thinks that they're amazing because of that. I mean, maybe they are, but when was the last time Oregon actually beat anyone of significance?
Well, Washington, or no? Who have they beat? No, I'm sorry.
Never.
They lost to Washington.
They beat us in our opening game in 2021. That was, I guess, their last big win.
Yeah, I mean, it would take some. The conference championships are a little different in the sense that there's going to be better competition overall. So, I mean, there's definitely some chances that some craziness could happen. I'm all for watching it. I really don't want, like last year, I don't want the Buckeyes in the playoffs at all. I mean, I like you and all the other Buckeye fans down in the dumps. That's the benefit of winning this game, which is like about to go away anyway because of the 12-team playoff. So whoever loses this game, they could still very easily make the playoffs, and their season's not over. But yeah, I mean, Ohio State playing Michigan again. I wouldn't mind playing this Ohio State team again. It'd be Kyle McCord. But yeah, last year.
Well, not necessarily. Maybe Devin Brown will get the start because he hasn't been playing because he's been injured since he hurt his knee or something like weeks ago. Maybe he'll be ready by then.
I have a feeling Devin Brown would be playing. Excuse me. He'd be playing a lot more, but he probably sucks because I mean, look at Cal. Like if you can't tell me Ryan Day just is holding a guy back for any reason, for any dumb like conspiracy reason, and he's awesome, and he just wants to play Kyle McCord for some dumb reason. Like you can't tell me.
Well, no, they had a Devin Brown package, and he was doing well in his package, and then he got hurt, so he hasn't played since he got hurt. So
The Devin Brown package is carrying a clipboard and tracking plays. That's the
he had a nice touchdown pass when he was in there. Like he had a 60-yard he had a 60-yard touchdown to one of the freshman 5-star receivers.
Was this in garbage time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not that impressive.
Yeah, I mean he played. He had some good moves. He did have one fumble, but he had a nice touchdown pass. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, the Pac-12 they don't pretend to play defense. Oregon, I think, is the only one that actually plays defense. Maybe Oregon State too, but none of the rest do. I thought Stanford would come through too. They haven't. I don't know. What is your confidence level for Ohio State? 1 out of 10 on making the playoffs.
I mean, it seems like it's not that far-fetched. I mean, the only thing I guess I'm like really worried about that Texas game, right? Because all the other ones are 5-point spread, so it's just that Texas one being, they're 12-point favorite. That's a pretty big upset, 12 points.
Yeah.
Right. So Texas has had some close games. They did just blow out Texas Tech by like 40 points. So I'm not sure. I didn't watch that game, so I'm not sure how they were able to do that. Like, I don't know maybe Quinn Ewers is more healthy now than he was, but I know that they lost their star running back a few weeks ago, who was pretty much their whole offense. So whether it was catching or running, like that guy was their whole offense. And Jonathan Banks, he was unbelievable. So losing him, like that's, almost as big of a loss as Florida State losing Jordan Travis.
Oh my gosh, that's sickening. Them losing Jordan Travis. That's why they're on the chopping block.
Yeah.
For sure. But who do they play? Is it going to be Louisville?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Louisville could beat them. Louisville just lost. Who did they lose to?
Kentucky somehow.
Okay.
But it's a rivalry game, so anything can happen in a rivalry. Yeah. Louisville's looked pretty good this year. They absolutely destroyed Notre Dame. I mean, we had a close game in Notre Dame, and they destroyed them.
Yeah.
So that was a really good win for them.
Right. Yeah. Antoine's mentioning Oregon having the type of receivers that Michigan would like to have. That's one thing about Michigan, man. Well, we all know that JJ doesn't throw the deep ball great when he's got to put air underneath the ball, but our receivers don't seem like they're very dynamic either. So that's very scary when you start having to play these other teams where you've got to score some serious points. You see these defensive struggles, Michigan could probably do great, but if you play against a Washington or an Oregon or some high-powered offense and they manage to get loose and go up a couple scores, it's kind of all over.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you guys about our secondary. I was saying how much better it was. I mean, look at your receivers. Like, I was getting mad because you guys were getting like 7-yard out passes on our corners, on diving 7-yard out passes for a first down. But like those receivers didn't get anything deep. Nothing. I don't think they had that one pass that Roman Wilson had in the end zone for a touchdown. That was the only pass over 5 yards they had the whole game.
Yeah, I don't think they even tried to go deep.
No, they did. They did. They went. They did. They went. They tried to go deep on Burke and on Igminosa. They went deep a couple times on out.
And it went in the stands, right? I don't think JJ being close.
No, they were close.
And you know what? We don't have a Marvin Harrison Jr. where you can just throw up to a covered guy against a 5-star DB who's going to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And he still catches the ball. So, I mean, that would be nice.
Can you imagine like Kyle McCord is throwing to Emeka Ibuka, Cade Stover, and Marvin Harrison, and he's still hot garbage half the time.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
I agree with that.
No way is Ohio State backing into the playoffs again. Not this time. Yeah, it doesn't look good.
It's not that far fetched though. Like it's last year all we needed was USC to lose, so obviously that was much easier. We only needed one team to be upset, whereas this year, Georgia has to beat Alabama, they're a favorite, so that should happen. And then, FSU, I don't have much faith with FSU with their backup quarterback. They did not look very good with him. They still have some good receivers, a good running back, and a pretty good defense. But, I think Louisville has a pretty good chance. Only 5-point
Yeah.
underdogs. So it's just whether or not Texas can lose or whether or not that even matters.
Texas can absolutely lose. Yeah, they absolutely can.
Yeah. They've had a ton of
For
close
sure.
games.
I know. All
It's
right.
just,
Well, hey,
yeah.
let's wrap this up. Sorry, Matt, about your team. I'm not that sorry, of course, but I would have totally expected you to actually wear some Buckeye gear and prepare. But I can tell you're in mourning.
Yeah.
3 years in a row, it's kind of a weird feeling. Like this time, it's not a crazy feeling that I felt the last 2 years because I wasn't expecting it. I didn't think there was a chance in hell last year because we were at Ohio State, but we picked it this year, and I think all of our picks, we'll have to go back and look. I think I did. I think I may have had something like a 31-24 or something like that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, stupid cough. But I think our picks were pretty close. But yeah, wrapping this up, I think we're looking forward to the next phase in all this. So hope you're feeling better. Give me a call like maybe once a day. Make sure you haven't hurt yourself.
Yeah, now I guess the only thing we got to worry about is Harbaugh's status. So like, I haven't heard anything. I assume that they're going to let him coach, or is the Big Ten going to step in and find another reason to keep him suspended?
No, but you know what?
He was talking about players making money again, so that might be the reason. Take him out again.
Hey, you know what's going to be a little awkward when Michigan wins the Big Ten championship and the Big Ten conference president has to hand the trophy over to the guy he suspended for 3 days for 3 games.
That's why I think he's not going to let him play in that game.
So he doesn't have to go through the optics of that.
Yes, I'm telling you,
They'll
I
just
wouldn't
suspend
be
him
surprised.
from the ceremony, because the Big Ten can do whatever they want.
They're going to try to do something. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks everyone in the comments. Your comments were hilarious. Thanks so much for posting them. It makes Matt sad, and those kind of things make me happy. So everyone, take care. Hope everyone has a great night. Stay safe. Have a good one. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.